Hey everyone, and welcome. Have you ever thought about how a single, critical moment can end up defining everything that comes after? Well, today, we're diving into a really fascinating passage from the Quran that does exactly that. It's from the 8th chapter, Al-Anfāl, and it captures this pivotal decision made right after a huge victory, a choice that literally became the ethical blueprint for an entire community.
And that really gets to the heart of the matter, right? After you've just won, against all odds, what's your next move? Do you focus on the profits, the spoils of war, or do you double down on the principles that got you there in the first place? This was the exact choice facing the early Muslim community right after the historic Battle of Badr.
All right, so let's jump right into our first section, the dilemma they faced right after the battle. The fighting's over, the victory is secure, but now comes the really tough part. What do you do with the captives? What about the riches? As you're about to see, the choice they made would have these massive ripple effects, shaping everything that came next.
So here you had the two paths, laid out clear as day. On one side, there's the very real, very tempting path of worldly gains. Ransoming the captives would bring in some much-needed cash for a community that was really struggling. But then, on the other side, you have the much bigger picture, the prophetic mission. The whole point was to build a society that was secure and just, and you just can't put a price tag on that.
And this quote just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? Verse 67 is this crucial reminder, this course correction that makes it absolutely clear that the higher goals have to be the ones steering the ship. You just can't let short-term pocket incentives hijack the entire mission. The mission has to come first, always.
So how does the divine guidance deal with this? The focus was a little off, right? What's so amazing here is that the response isn't this harsh, top-down judgment. Instead, what we see is this incredibly sophisticated and merciful way of correcting course.
It's really like a masterclass in wise leadership broken down into 3 steps. First, in verse 67, he reestablished the core principle. The mission is more important than the money. Simple. Then, in verse 68, there's a gentle correction, a sort of, hey, your focus on the spoils was a bit premature, but it's softened with mercy. And then finally, once the lesson is learned, verse 69 gives permission to actually enjoy the spoils, but, and this is the key part, only if it's done lawfully and ethically.
Okay, so this just keeps building, because now the focus shifts from the believers themselves to the captives. And this is where the guidance goes from being about broad policy to something deeply personal and, honestly, pretty strategic. Now, back then, the way things were usually done was super simple. Captives were assets. Their family paid up, and you let them go. It was a straightforward business transaction.
But then verse 70 comes in and just completely flips the script. It tells the prophet to offer these captives something way more valuable than just their freedom. He's told to offer them a chance at transformation. To tell them, look, if God finds any good in your hearts, he won't just forgive you. He'll give you something better than what you lost. This changes everything. It's no longer about a transaction. It's about an invitation to change.
Of course, this wasn't some naive, pie-in-the-sky offer. It was grounded in reality. Verse 71 comes right after with a dose of caution. It basically says, if these captives are planning to betray you, well, that's just a sign of a deeper betrayal they've already committed against God. The lesson is clear. Be merciful, be open to change, but don't be a fool. You have to be smart about the very real risks. And this, right here, is where it all comes together. That ethical foundation they just built, by dealing with captives and spoils in a principled way, now zooms out and becomes the blueprint for the entire social and political structure of their new community. So verse 72 introduces us to the 2 foundational groups of this new society. First, you have the muhajirun. These are the emigrants who gave up everything, their homes, their wealth, to flee persecution in Mecca. Then you have the Ansar, the helpers, in Medina who opened their arms and gave them shelter and support. Their bond is the bedrock of the entire community.
And the text paints this incredibly stark contrast. On one side, you have an alliance built on shared faith and real, tangible sacrifice, people who actually have each other's backs. The outcome? A strong, orderly society. But what happens when alliances are just based on mutual self-interest? The verse gives a stark warning. If you don't form these principled bonds, you're headed for social decay, corruption, and just plain chaos.
This quote just says it all, doesn't it? It perfectly captures what's going on in verse 72. A strong community isn't just about people believing the same things. It's about that belief leading to real, costly action. The shared belief is what connects everyone's hearts, but it's the shared sacrifice that binds their duty to each other. That's what creates that unbreakable bond of protection and support. And verse 74 basically doubles down on this idea by spelling out what true belief actually looks like. It's not just something you feel, it's something you do. It's demonstrated through things like migrating for your faith, struggling with your time and money, giving shelter to those who need it, and forming protective alliances. These, the text says, are the real marks of a genuine believer.
So, if we just take a step back and look at the whole journey we've just been on, it's incredible. We started with a single, practical decision on a battlefield, what to do with captives. And from that one point, the guidance just expanded, layer by layer, until it became this comprehensive blueprint for social unity, for political alliances, for a resilient community built on shared principles.
And that leaves us with this final, really powerful thought. This passage, which started in a very specific moment in history, ends up asking a question that is absolutely timeless. It's a question for any group, any nation, any community. How do you balance your highest ideals, your grand mission, with the practical, on-the-ground rules and loyalties you need to actually survive and thrive? It's that constant push and pull between our vision and reality, a challenge that every single society in its own way is still trying to figure out today.